Bobby Charlton, well done, Manchester United.
It's a Sheringham, and Solskjaer has won it! And it's saved it! United again! Renee! A magnificent goal by Robin van Persie!
Welcome to United Hour, your official Red Cafe podcast for all things Manchester United. I'm your host, Nick.
I'm Colm.
And I'm Jamie.
So yeah, three of us back here, just a couple of hours after the Arsenal game. Obviously, we're not in anywhere near as good spirits as we were just a few days ago when we were having a kind of celebration party after hammering against RB Leipzig. It's difficult to kind of explain how we have these big, twice in a row now, we've had two mega wins in the Champions League and then been a real anti-climax going back in the Premier League. Both times at home against kind of London clubs who are our kind of top six, top four rivals. And yeah, we've only come out 1 point out of those two games, which is, simply not good enough. Colm, how do you explain the kind of big difference between what we do in the Champions League and then how we're playing in the league over there?
It's very difficult to explain. It's not unexpected or surprising, but it is difficult to explain. I think if we were, turn it up at the start of the season, say 4 or 5 games unbeaten, and then you had this run of fixtures where you had Chelsea, Arsenal in between two massive Champions League games, I think then you could probably find a better excuse or a better explanation for our kind of poor post-Champions League form. It's difficult to play in midweek at the level that we're playing at, 2 massive games against PSG and Leipzig, and then to play at the weekend, is a tax. But I think given how we started the year and the pressure that we've put on ourselves in the league, it just, for me, makes it even harder to understand, because you keep expecting a response in the league, or you keep expecting a change in our kind of form or our presence and our ability on the pitch, something to sort of start to click, and for them to realise that this is now, a good portion into the season. It's not just, a fatigue from last year thing anymore, or just a slow start. It's it's a good run of games now where this has been a consistent issue, and it's really inexplicable to me. It just kind of points at that wider problem that we've always sort of had under Ole, despite all the positives that we've been speaking about over the last couple of weeks, is that consistency has been impossible to lay a hand on, apart from maybe a period at the end of last year, and even then it was it culminated in another sort of slight crash. So it's just been typified by these highest of highs, lowest of lows, and that's something that's really starting to grind on me. It's becoming really difficult to take, because you're starting to expect it now, and that just makes it all the more crushing, I think, when it's delivered.
Yeah, it is actually something that David had mentioned on the last couple of shows about how, we're kind of 2 steps forward, always 1 step back. And I gave David quite a lot of stick, but I thought I should definitely be here to do a podcast after not a good performance, after giving a lot of stick back to him for when things were going very well for Ole and everything. The only way I can really explain it is that obviously, we went for a very high press performance midweek with all the players really giving their all, running their bollocks off and doing a damn good job, working hard for the team. And I don't know if it is just too much for them to then be doing a second time in a week. But, at the same time, we've actually had an extra day's recovery than Arsenal had.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a bit more rotation because they're playing in the Europa League, not as difficult a game as we've had. But still, as I say, we can't really have any excuses there. Jamie, do you have any explanation for it?
No, none at all. Kind of just to echo what Colm's saying and what you said at the start of the pod, that it's been 2 excellent performances in the Champions League against 2 good sides, and not only have we played well in terms of each player individually, as a team at times we've looked really good. We've scored some very good goals, and I know the Chelsea game was a bit of a damp squib last week, and I just thought that was a game where both teams just looked very happy with a point. Nobody looked like they wanted to take the extra risk to try and win the game. Today, I've no idea what happened today, in all honesty. And from the second minute, you could just see Arsenal were so much quicker in speed of thought in their press. and snapping into tackles and closing us down. They were winning every second ball. They weren't allowing the players any time to settle on the ball. We just didn't react to it whatsoever. I don't know. It was just one of those things where you find it hard to explain what happened, really, because there wasn't any excuses. We have had a very good performance on Wednesday evening, and we should have been well up for this game. We should have been ready to tear into them from the beginning. We should have been looking to get some momentum going finally. Yet it's this inexcusable trend of home form in the league where we just can't seem to do anything at the moment. But no matter who the opposition is, we just struggle at home, and it's hard to find any reasons for it at the moment.
Yeah, it is bizarre now that, no home win so far in the league at Old Trafford, and did actually see Harry Maguire being asked exactly about that in the post-match. I mean, he rightly pointed out that obviously we've absolutely smashed Leipzig at home midweek, so it's not exactly a
I don't think
problem
it's
at home.
and equally
But
with or without fans. I don't even know what the takeaway is from no home wins. I think it's just happenstance essentially that our poor performances have come at home. I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's anything about traveling to another ground that makes us play better. Just to me, it's just that's the way the fixtures have fallen, and that's when we've played badly. To me, it just points out that you're kind of 50-50 with what you're going to get with United, and it just so happens that it's always landed on heads. It's always been at home so far this year. That it's just a Jekyll and Hyde team at the moment that is kind of lurching from the sublime to the ridiculous, and we don't really seem to be able to control that in any way, shape, or form. I don't really get what the home thing has to do with it, other than it sounds like a nice stat,
Yeah, I mean, I do think as well in a kind of, COVID era that the whole home and away thing kind of goes a bit out the window. And we're seeing that all over the league. That just, obviously no fans and everything. It does make a difference, but it still doesn't explain why we don't have any wins at home. It might explain that you don't have as many as usual and whatever. But yeah, like you say, I think maybe it's just that way. I thought this game in a way was not too dissimilar actually to Chelsea. The only difference being was that I thought we were slightly better than Chelsea and had more chance of winning the game, whereas this where it's gone the other way around. And even though Arsenal are getting quite a lot of credit from all round for how well they worked, how well they defended, they actually didn't create that much themselves.
No.
And apart from a pretty crap penalty, and again sometimes you can say a player's unlucky. I saw a few people saying, it's just an unlucky Pogba penalty that's only lost us this game. But actually, it's the third penalty that Paul Pogba's given away this season. And, once is unlucky, but 3 times just starts becoming basically, unforgivable to do that again.
Also, it's not unlucky if it's a lazy challenge, or a bad challenge or a silly challenge. Like, that's not unlucky. I recall Bruno's penalty against, was it Brighton?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
That's what I would call an unlucky penalty, where he just kind of finds himself in a position where there's a tango of legs kind of thing. But when you're physically making a challenge and stamping on someone's foot or stepping into someone, then that's just bad defending. There's nothing lucky about it.
Yeah, and neither of you were on the show last time after Leipzig, and of course it was Pogba's first start for a while, and I thought he had a really good game. He actually worked hard, set up goal, and we were talking about, hopefully he's back fit now and he can start contributing. But then today he's been pretty bad all round. I say again that maybe there's a slight excuse that, maybe he's not ready to play 2 matches, but I just think that starts becoming a bit pathetic at this point in the season, especially since we're a bit far in now. At the start of the season, he definitely had some leeway, having been ill, and was definitely way off fitness, and in hindsight should not have been playing as many games as he started. But at this point, you can't really give him that excuse. And it's just basically, bad performance all round. And the main issue today was, we're not creating enough today. Like I say, Arsenal didn't create much, but they created more than we did and deserved probably to win the game. I mean, with a stat we've not talked about for a long time, which we talked about a lot last season, was the XG. I was just looking at it, and Arsenal basically were bang on at 1 goal, and we're at 0.3 or 4 or something like that. Whereas at Chelsea last week, it was different. Chelsea was at 0.2 and we were at 0.7. So, maybe slightly more deserving, but still deserving 0 at the end of it, I guess. But where are you at on Pogba now, Colm? Because I know, like me,
Nowhere
I think
good.
you've always been. Well, I think you've always said, look, some players and a lot of fans I know as well have like given up on him a long time ago. I've still had that hope that he can deliver because we know what he can do, and I think you've always as well said, look, he can be a world class player. But yeah, look,
Yeah, I've absolutely always been a big fan of Pogba's talent. I mean, anyone who is watching football and doesn't think that Paul Pogba has the potential or is an extremely good player has lost the objectivity in my mind. It's not rational. I mean, he is a super player. Even in bad performances, he does lots of really good things that a lot of other players couldn't. However, there are just these consistent issues. I've long been on record as saying that despite how much I admire him as a footballer and how much as I wish that he could be the player that I see for France and also the player that I know will probably exist somewhere else for United, I just don't think it's ever going to be the case. I've always said, I think for the last year or two anyway, that the test has kind of failed. You know, the project has not been what everyone wanted it to be for various different reasons, and various different people are culpable for that. Not just Pogba himself. But for me, it's done, and it's gotten to the point now where, and I think this is where a lot of fans are, where you kind of do lose objectivity with it, where even little things that aren't really that significant in the grand context of a game start to really irk you and annoy you. Lots of these patterns of play that we just see repeated all over, him engaging contact when it is necessary, for him being lazy in his defending, for him giving away penalties, for him just being generally wasteful, for him seeming to never be able to shake himself out of a bad game, essentially. If he has poor moments early in a game or seems to be not at the races, you just see that for the whole 90 minutes. But to his credit and to our demise, he'll keep taking the ball, keep trying these things and keep making mistakes, and just seems to compound the problems by trying to do it all himself.
But he did have a good game midweek, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He was good midweek. He was as awful as he was today. He was extremely good midweek. So, and there's been periods in his United career where he's carried us. The season when we finished second was essentially completely down to David De Gea being unbelievable in nets and Paul Pogba being absolutely fantastic. I think providing something like 10 assists that year when he should have provided 4 going by XG or X assists. So, there's been periods at United where he's been extremely good. And
he did have that amazing period when Ole first took over as well.
Yeah,
and I think that was when he ended up in the team of the year, didn't he?
So, the player is there. Like, everyone should know that. No one should really be able to argue against that at this point. It's the kind of pain you have to go through to get that. And to me, the way that causes issues for the team, I said at the start of the year I would love Henderson to come in just for a bit of rejuvenation, to send a statement to say that we're moving forward as a team. And David Hay's been brilliant, so I have to eat a bit of humble pie in that regard. But I feel the same way about Pogba. I would love him to leave. I would absolutely love him to leave. And I say that with no malice or no vindictiveness or no spite or anything like that. He is a super player. I think he's a super fella. Some things are questionable in the media, but that's any footballers want these days. But I just think he needs to go for the team to move on. I think there's a more balanced team there when he doesn't play. And there's an argument to be had as to whether that's Ole's fault or Paul Pogba's fault or Mourinho's fault, or why is no one being able to get the best out of him? That's a very difficult question to answer, and it's not just down to Paul Pogba, definitely not. But no one seems to be able to on any kind of consistent basis, and it's a bit of a sideshow. It's a bit of a circus, and I'm just fed up with it. I've reached the kind of the pinnacle of it, and I would just rather, I don't want the 6 good games if it's going to mean the 6 bad games after. That's how our whole squad is, and it's so tiresome.
Yeah, look, we have to talk about, because people were talking kind of midweek about, look, this is Pogba's best position, playing on a kind of attacking kind of left side of midfield, and we played the diamond and it worked well. And then we've started with the diamond again today. Jamie, were you happy to see that diamond again? Because a lot of people think, look, this is the best way for us to get our strongest team on the pitch, because we've got a high quality kind of range of midfielders now and lacking in wide players, so it kind of seems to make sense in a way. So did you think that was going to work out today? It hasn't done in the end, but were you happy when you saw the team sheet?
Yeah, when I saw the team sheet I thought it was fine, and going off of again, kind of alluding to what I said earlier, going off of the performance against Leipzig, I didn't have any issues with it at all, because we played really well on Wednesday, as we're kind of pointing out, we did. So, having the same formation, more or less the same personnel, I didn't have any issues with it at all. I thought we would be able to utilise some of the strengths we have in terms of winning the ball back a lot in the midfield, stretching Arsenal where we could up front. And I know we don't have wingers, but we had Greenwood on the right, Pogba on the left, where everybody says, yeah, that's one of his best positions. We should be able to cause some damage. But, I mean, as I said, from the 5th minute, watching the game, you could just tell it just wasn't going to work. The shape just wasn't going to work. And it took too long. I mean, we eventually changed at half-time, changed the shape, and then for 10-15 minutes we perform a bit better. But the change in shape had to come much, much sooner than it did, because it wasn't like we were getting any sort of joy. We weren't getting any joy at all from the system, and we should have changed it much sooner than we did. Again, I thought it was fine with it at kick-off. I thought it was fair enough because we had a good performance using it, but no, it clearly just doesn't work for some players in some positions.
Is that the system or was that the players today? Because the system worked midweek.
I think it's both. I genuinely think it's both. I don't know what happened with Greenwood. I just thought Greenwood just looked at times like he was lost. I don't know if he just didn't know where he was meant to be, what positions he was meant to be taking up, if he understood his role. I just thought he just looked lost. Pogba, I just kind of echo what Colm says on Pogba, and we all know he's a good player, we know that. I'm just tired of the circus around him, and as you said, Nick, if he starts poor, he just never seems to just shake himself out of it. He always seems to just drag that with him. The system just, I suppose, maybe it wasn't the system, it was the players, because the players weren't great. But if that's the case, then change the shape a wee bit. See if we can get the players going again by changing the shape. And we didn't do that until half time. And then, like I say, we actually played not bad for 5-10 minutes after we changed the shape at half time. We started getting into the game a little bit more, but then it just fizzled out. It totally fizzled out. We waited too long to make any substitutions, and by the time you make the subs, it's just carnage on the pitch. I mean, you could see for the players that were actually on the pitch, and the system we then adapted to was just wrong for the players that actually ended up on the pitch.
I don't know that there was a system at the end, to be honest. I think it all just completely, the wheels came off, really, to be honest.
It was a car crash by the end of the game. It was chaos by the end of the game.
Yeah, at the end it was definitely messy. But yeah, I do think Ole obviously clearly did change it to what has been his more settled kind of 4-2-3 kind of 1 at half time, and we did look a lot better going into that second half. And to be honest, like, all right, Arsenal, they had the odd little chance or whatever, but they didn't create much till after that. So apart from giving away the penalty, I wouldn't say that, like, we were absolutely like getting hammered or anything. They've created very little. There's actually a very similar amount of shots from both teams, shots on targets. If you look at the stats, it doesn't look like we've been played off the park or anything like that. But just, it was obviously still disappointing. The one thing, I don't think that the diamond is the issue. I just think it didn't work today. One of the big differences, midweek we were going for a super high press to try and match their press. We obviously were not doing that today. Arsenal are pretty well set up defensively. I think, when Arteta came in, some people kind of thought it's going to be like the new Guardiola because he's been working under him, but he actually doesn't play anything like Guardiola. He has a much more defensive system. Arsenal have kind of struggled to score goals recently, but are pretty solid, and that's kind of the way they went. I mean, that Partey looks like a good player. I know Reece is a big fan of his and was hoping we were going to buy him, and has definitely come in and improved their midfield no end. But yeah, look, we shouldn't say that like we were like played off the park or anything here, but it just was disappointing, obviously, after getting absolutely hammered 5-0, winning 5-0 midweek. I wanted to talk about the one thing that surprised me in the kind of lineup was Fred starting again, because he's actually started our last 4 matches. So this was his 5th start. He didn't play the full 90 in every. I think he came on off after 70 minutes versus Newcastle. But then he's played the full 90 in the next 3 matches: PSG, Chelsea, Leipzig. So I really just thought there's no way he was going to start again today. So then to see him starting again was a surprise to me. And we have, it's even though I've always been, massively Ole in and always like big positive, it has been my biggest complaint was that he's not rotated enough and some players just get played way too many minutes. And I think that is a big reason why we struggled, because, Fred's just not anywhere near up to like his top game, especially after that high pressing, high energy game we've played midweek. For him then to be given a fifth start to me was like, a pretty difficult decision. So I do think Ole definitely has to take criticism today. And, I will go to one of the questions we had actually from Baku 1978 on Red Cafe, because we've had a few comments, and he was one of the ones who thought I'd been pretty unfair on David criticism of Ole a couple of weeks ago. So, he was saying, collectively terrible today. Arsenal better prepared, more coherent system and deserved the win. We were all over the place and Ole needs to take responsibility. He says, pathetic performance, all our momentum gone. He says there's been a lot of fanfare about Solskjaer in the last few games, but how can we justify 7 points from 6 games in 15th place? And look, he's right now. Now it's very difficult to justify it. And I was, a couple of weeks ago, I was justifying it and saying, look, we've still got a game in hand. It's early days in the season, and we can easily turn this around in this kind of topsy-turvy season. But this result is a real hammer blow for us, and to me, actually, this is actually a bigger issue than when we've lost to Palace and even Spurs earlier in the season. Because, in Spurs we had 10 men, so you can kind of like say, look, we've got to write it off for that. But here, to lose this game, even though it was nowhere near as actually bad a performance, it was just a very average performance, a kind of 5-6 out of kind of 10 performance all round. Losing this game is actually a big issue now, and now we're starting to become a bit detached from the rest of the league, and that's where now, unless it can be turned around straight away, it is going to start becoming an issue. And the next game is actually going to be Everton away, that we'll kind of talk about maybe a bit more later. They're not in great form either. But and Colm, do you think, like, are you confident that we can turn this around now, or are you just...
Well, no, not at all. I don't know how anyone could be. I generally don't know how anyone can predict anything about Manchester United at the moment. And for me, that is the big takeaway that I'm just going to repeat over and over again, I think, every time you ask me a question today, because there's just a total lack of control within this club at the moment, within the players and within the coaching staff. I think it's a toss of a coin, and to me that is the hallmark of a small club, really, to be honest. Playing up in big games is not necessarily something to laud if you can't have a 7 out of 10 performance 4 weeks in a row, or even close to it. When we're, as I said before, lurching from the spectacular to the comical, when you're completely capitulating against Spurs, struggling against Newcastle, but then maybe papering it over with, a very last minute flurry of a few goals, when you're having these fantastic Champions League nights, but playing out a complete snorefest against Chelsea and then leaving yourself vulnerable in exactly the same way against Arsenal. It's just, there's no rhyme or reason, there's no patterns, there's no consistency, and there's no control. So I have no confidence that we will ever win a Premier League game at home, because nothing so far this year has suggested to me that we might. Like, I feel like next week Fulham could rock up and do exactly what Arsenal just did to us. I don't think Arsenal... the most impressive thing Arteta has done at Arsenal is make them look like no Arsenal team I have seen for about 20 years. Like, they've just gone to a really functional, hard-working unit, which is not something we would ever associate with Arsenal. They've bought well, but they're a decent team that is just really well drilled and set out to absolutely stop us today, which they did. If you were to view that game in isolation, I don't think it's the worst in the world. We weren't at the races, but it happens. But it's when you view it in the context of the 10 or 12 games we've played so far this year, we're just, we're all over the place. We're like punch drunk. You just do not know what's going to come out of this Manchester United team, and I find that infuriating. And I think it's a huge concern for Ole, because I think as much as the players take huge responsibility, he's the one who is ultimately going to have the the end kind of buck stopping with. I just think that's a big cause for concern, a huge cause for concern. And, the league's quite higgledy-piggledy for everyone this year, but there's a lot of teams there that I think, even in the fixtures we have coming up after this quote-unquote difficult run of fixtures, a lot of them fill me with dread. The likes of your Everton, I think, are would go into that as probably a strong favourite. I think you have Southampton, who look like they could do a job on us like they did last year under Hasenhüttl, and then you have the like of Villa, who have started very well. There's just no games that I would take much confidence into. I would take much more confidence into the big European games than I would into any Premier League game, and that is not the hallmark of a good team or a top 4 team at all. It can't be. It's the opposite. You should be smashing those teams, and the big game should be, well, it's a coin flip. Both teams are good. Anything can happen, and we're like the opposite of that at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we should look at, like I say, we touched on it, the changes kind of Ole's made. So yeah, as I said, midweek he's been given a lot of credit for setting up tactically, getting spot on, getting the team to do the hard work. So yeah, we have to go into detail on what Ole's done today. So look, we started with the diamond. Jamie, I don't totally agree with you. I don't think the diamond is the problem. And I just think, again, like Fred, nowhere near doing what he was doing midweek. Pogba also not putting in the same kind of performance as he's managed midweek. And Fred has a bit of excuse after playing that many games in a row, whereas Pogba doesn't have that excuse. There were weird things that, finally Ole was starting to rotate players, and we were talking about how he's got good options from the bench. So, Rashford and Bruno had not started midweek, so should have been fresh and ready at it. Rashford was still okay. Bruno, I don't know, I kind of hardly noticed him in the game today, and he's always trying different things, and his passing kind of accuracy and all is often kind of lowish for what you'd want in a player around kind of late 70s, but he's always, still creating a few chances in there, which is why it's worth it. Whereas today, I don't know, he just wasn't on his game at all. Or do you think they've just done a good job on him by marking him out of the match? As I say, Partey's played well. Gabriel as one of their other new players who's definitely come in and improved their defence there. I know, Jamie, you're a big fan of Tierney, right?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I thought he was maybe not the best player for Arsenal, but I just thought he was solid. I thought he was good today. I just think...
And yeah, the interesting question, right, wasn't it, from one of your Arsenal supporting friends saying, how many Arsenal players do you think would get into the United team? And I think we'd kind of had a bit of discussion about this before, but how many do you think, Jamie?
I think 3, and I think the 3 probably are Aubameyang. Partey looks excellent. He looks a really good purchase for Arsenal, and I would take Tierney as well. At a 4th kind of push, I would maybe take Bellerin as well, because I just like Bellerin. I think he's a good player.
Yeah, Tierney, you mean he was coming in for who?
For Shaw. I just think he's a better player than Shaw. I know people might not agree with me or whatever, but I think he's a better player.
I don't think there's a huge amount in it, to be honest. Like, Tierney's no world beater. He is like an up-and-coming, he is a good player, but I don't think there's that much in it. Whereas, Partey is definitely a damn good player. And, yeah, Aubameyang, we're still missing that kind of number 9, although he's not playing number 9 for them nowadays, and not getting that many goals, but he's still got that penalty for them, and yeah, he's won the game for them at the end of the day. I mean, there isn't, like I said, there's not that many players from the Arsenal team that you'd necessarily take. I mean, yeah, maybe that Gabriel is a good purchase. We're still saying we haven't maybe got the right partner for Maguire, although, yeah, Lindelof's been okay for the last couple of games, although, yeah, he did give the ball away again today in a couple of dangerous times. I mean, Com, do you agree with that?
I do agree exactly. I would actually take Bellerin and Tierney as well. The Tierney and Shaw one is maybe a bit of a toss-up, although I think Tierney's delivery is just absolutely wicked. I think it's one of the best in the league for a fullback, and that's the basis on which I'd take him. I haven't watched him enough to know that he's that good defensively, although I know he plays sometimes the back 3 for both Arsenal and Scotland, so I'd be pretty confident in saying that I'd probably have him over Shaw. Although there are injury worries, but I'm not kind of taking that into consideration. I think he's a super young player. I really would have loved us to get him. But I think, what Jamie's mate is kind of pointing to is that on paper we are a much better, much deeper squad than what Arsenal have. And that one game isn't an accurate reflection of whether that will be the case. So I don't think it's just as simple as that. But it does kind of strike at something that we'll all be thinking, which is, why can no one seem to get out of this squad what we believe it should be capable of, other than in fits and starts? And I think that's kind of what that question is pointing toward, because you wouldn't just have to do that comparison with Arsenal. You could look at that Brighton game, and I appreciate what you're saying, Nick, about our fitness earlier in the year and et cetera, but I bet you there'll be more of these games throughout the year, many more of them, where you look at teams who just have a good plan and are well organised, because that's essentially all Arsenal were today. We were the architects of our own demise, in that, as you've pointed out, and I think very correctly, Fred was poor, couldn't string passes together. McTominay did nothing until the start of the second half when he went into a more comfortable role for him. Rashford was absolutely awful, wanted to spend most of the game lying down instead of actually trying to take anyone on or dribble at anyone. Greenwood not in the game, Bruno not in the game. Fullbacks both offered very, very little. To a man, we were sloppy, the passing was poor, it was slow, it was lethargic. And that's not because of the diamond, and that's not because of something amazing that Arsenal did. I think it was just a very, very, very bad day at the office for nearly all of our players, and you just can't have that.
Yeah, I mean, on Greenwood, I think it is the first time he's played anything other than just being the right of a kind of attacking three, right? It's the first time, because, we have played these kind of split forwards in the past, and we have played the other day the diamond, but I think it's the first time he's coming in and playing in this kind of way. Like I say, it's the slight excuse for him, but he did still have the odd shot for us. But yeah,
I would have kept him on. I would have kept him on just because I always think he's, if you put him in the position in the box, sometimes think we're a bit harsh on him that we expect him to do too much. Now the bar is so high, because he's not someone who's necessarily going to create chances on his own or indeed create for other people. Those things might come into his game. The one thing we know about him is that if you feed him the ball in positions in and around their penalty area, particularly kind of out wide in the penalty area, he'll basically do it for himself and force chances. And he had that early shot on target from the Rashford ball in behind, which is quite nice. He beat Gabriel a few times in the corner. And
in fact, that early shot was the only shot on target pretty much in the first half.
Absolutely shocking.
And Arsenal didn't have anything on target either, even though they had better play than us.
It was a dire football match. It was exactly like Chelsea. It was a dire football match. But one of the things that concerns me about this is, Ole has been back now in the market, maybe not as much as we all would have wanted. We didn't get Sancho, right, we get it. But we all look at the bench now and go, do you know what? We have a proper team here. Like, we have the makings, and we see the performances that back that up. And yet I still think we play a supremely reactionary and negative brand of football. Like, I just don't understand. And I don't think it's all on Ole, but it is all concerning to me. Like, there's no reason why in those two games we have to play the way we have played. Like, it's so negative. We start so slowly. We move the ball so slowly. We don't really seem to have, and I'll say it again, Nick, you'll probably sick to death me here, patterns of play down the flanks or anything, a way of creating chances other than on the break. And that's just not enough. That is just not enough. And it's just really disappointing at this stage.
I know you were saying you don't think Arsenal had a lot of chances, but at the same time, I do think we were very, very lucky to go in level at half time, because they didn't cut us apart per se, and De Gea's making loads of saves, but Willian clips the top of the bar with a
Saka
shot.
Header.
Saka has a header from literally 6 yards out that he should score. He's in the air and it's a free header and he puts it over the bar. They had so many corners, and there was another chance where the ball comes across at the back stick and Aubameyang just doesn't get there. That's
that one that was pulled back for Lacazette that he completely scuffed, went under his foot.
Yeah.
No, you are right. They definitely had more play than us, and I was happy to be 0-0 at half time, and we were bad. But I'm just saying, De Gea didn't really have a save to make. So, and that is where Arsenal are at. They're like, as you said, Colm, they've got a good system. They're solid, but they're not creating that much and struggling to score goals themselves. But yeah, look, let's talk then. As we said, we started going on to the fact that Ole does then change it, goes to a 4-2-3-1. The second half I thought was very even until we give away a horrible penalty. And then after that was where the real problems came. And it's difficult to give tell me, Jamie, do you think Ole should get credit for changing it at half time and then things did start improving?
I don't know if it's credit, because as I said, he deserves credit because he changed the shape and we came out straight after half time and we looked better for 10-15 minutes. But as I
think they actually said the stat was that within about 10 minutes we'd already had more touches in Arsenal's box than we had in the whole half.
Yeah,
first half.
We had something like 4 shots in the first 10 minutes of the second half as opposed to 1 in the entire first half. So in 10 minutes we'd come out and done more already. So he deserves credit in the sense that, he changed the shape. But as I said earlier on, he had to change it earlier than he did, because the first half was just, I don't even know how to describe it. There was just nothing happening.
So you mean you think he should have actually changed it within 20 minutes, in the middle of the first half?
20-25 minutes. I don't even mean make substitutions. I just mean change the shape. Just maybe see, like how we did at the start of the second half, instead of sitting with the diamond, go 4-2-3-1, we have players not playing very well. Let's just try and just get the players a bit more comfortable and grow from there and see what happens. And we done it at the start of the second half, and then, as I said, I don't think Arsenal did have much in terms of the way of possession or efforts in the second half, and it was a careless penalty. But from our point of view as well, it just fizzled out after 15-20 minutes. We didn't really do anything. We then make a like-for-like sub, and Matic coming on for Fred. Fred looked knackered, so that's fair enough. But then we wait far too long again after that before making necessary changes, because we got the momentum back at the start of the 10-15 minutes into the second half. You need to keep the momentum going. You can't just let it fizzle out and nothing happens.
Yeah, well, I think the timing of their goal was a killer for us because, as I said, we started the second half all right, nothing amazing, but we were it was even. It was now an even game with Arsenal, and it's at that 60-minute mark that Matic comes on, and I thought he actually did pretty well. And yeah, it's literally like 5 minutes later that Pogba then does the absolute naive and gives away the penalty. And after that, we're then chasing the game, basically.
The thing is, first half was right off. It was diabolical. And I put that down as much to the players as I do Ole. I don't think there was a huge issue with our system. I think it was maybe slightly naive to think that exactly what worked against, well, not even exactly, but the same shape that worked against Leipzig would just kind of transfer to Arsenal. Sure, they play five at the back as well. It's bound, it's bound to work. I'm not sure that was the intent, but I think with Martial being still suspended, that lineup was the one that made the most sense. And I think everyone unanimously, ominously, before the game was absolutely buzzing with it, which was, I think, the biggest indicator that we were going to be completely awful, because that just never happens and shouldn't happen, clearly. So that was the first red flag. So I don't really, the first half for me, I think at 0-0 to make drastic changes from the sideline is perhaps asking a bit much and viewing it slightly in hindsight, which I think a lot.
I'd agree with that.
Which I think is
and
happening
especially
a lot with
we
this
see
game.
that Ole is actually a manager who is reluctant to do a lot before half time. And he very rarely does.
I think what the other thing we have to remember is that this game was 0-0 and ended 1-0. It wasn't 6-1 at Spurs. It wasn't that kind of game, even though in the performance it might have been just as depressing and just as demoralising in a contextual sense. In a realistic sense, it was 0-0. Any team could have won that. Either team could have won that. And if Matic comes on the 60th minute, we've already grown into the game. McTominay and Fred suddenly look much more functional and secure, and we're having so much more of the ball. And if we make a chance and score, it's a completely different game. And we're all probably sitting there now recording this podcast going, well, do you know what? It was a stinking start, but Ole did exactly the right thing, and we came out much better, and we got the goal. We won the game. Credit. This is a real grinded out win. Win ugly. Doesn't really matter. It was a difficult game. Class, and these are extremely fine margins. So I don't think too much should be put on this particular game, other than the fact that we were just kind of dreadful to a man. Now, I did mention at the start, it did seem a bit like the wheels came off after the goal, and then it just became a firefighting kind of throw everyone on, no real plan of how we're going to get back into the game. That's when it got really bad for me. But, before that, I think it was as much as bad as we are, it was still a finely balanced game. So I don't think you can criticize too much in terms of the kind of in-game tactics of it all. It was just bad from start to finish. And I think and I'm remiss to defend Ole too much in these situations, because these are issues that we've kind of highlighted throughout, that his in-game management is very good and he's very reactive and slow to make changes. But viewing it today, I just thought the players are they're just awful, and I don't mean that in a general sense. I just mean today they were literally all just awful. I struggle to pick out anyone who had anything even approaching a good game.
I thought Pogba's substitution deserved criticism though as well, because alright, Bruno had one of those games where nothing was happening, but at the same time, how he takes Bruno off before Pogba is baffling to me. Absolutely baffling. I don't know what he was thinking.
That was a very strange decision. And I was actually going to exactly come on to that, talking about those two subs. Because again, gave Ole a lot of credit for the subs midweek that, kind of came on and changed the game when Rashford and Bruno came in. Today, I think even at halftime, we were seeing a few calls for people saying, let's get Cavani in. But I think there's been a bit too much expectation put on him because he's way off full fitness. Still, you can tell that he's not really getting in the game. But yeah, Cavani comes in, Greenwood goes off. I wasn't so sure about that, because Greenwood is a player who can get a goal from anywhere. But then the one that, I agree with you, Jamie. I thought I did not expect Bruno to be coming out, even though he hadn't been doing anything, because we've seen time and time again that he can do nothing and then just pull out that right pass or right shot to change a game. And especially when Pogba was struggling, and Bruno had been rested midweek, so he hadn't been tired. He shouldn't. Whereas Pogba was the one who'd started. So that did seem like a very bizarre option. And the only reason is because I think he thinks that Donny van de Beek's best position is Bruno's position, and that's where he wants him to come and play. That's the only rationale I can put behind it.
It seemed at the time for me, and I mean I might be reading too much into Ole's mind here. I thought he wanted Pogba to play out of the bad game, basically, to kind of. I felt like he was risking it to kind of get some sort of response from him or have him be involved in something good to kind of stem that negativity or give him a little bit of a positive product to take from that game. And it just looked a bit stubborn in that sense to me to keep him on because, objectively we all know it, everyone watching knows it, and anyone who's watched Pogba for a while knows that when he's in a stink it's likely going to get even stinkier, so to me it was a really obstinate decision. And the only one thing I could say is Bruno looked wrecked. I appreciate what you're saying that he didn't play midweek, but throughout that game he was really leading a press that no one else wanted any part of. Like, it was so disjointed, it was so disappointing to watch because I've just seen us press really well collectively against Leipzig, and I've seen us press really well in very specific games under Ole, and yet I would still argue that generally there is no press at United and it's not a good one. And I know there's stats that show we're a better pressing team, and I know there's individual games where we do it extremely well, particularly when we play 5 at the back. But broadly in most games, Rashford, lazy, does not want to press or physically can't do it. Greenwood, one of the two as well. And it was just Bruno running up to their defender, the defender passing it, Bruno looking around and being angry with whoever was beside him for not following him in the press. And for me, I'm still really stuck in understanding, Ole says about fitness and these kind of buzzwords that he throws out, at the start of the year and last year about what kind of team we are. And they do just sound like platitudes because I don't see anything consistently about our game other than this kind of counter-attacking, give us loads of space and we'll be class, which is just so rudimentary, essentially,
But I don't think that they've been told to press today. Even if Bruno is, I don't think the whole team has been told to press. Definitely not like they've been instructed to do midweek, because you could see the difference from. Like,
that's the problem.
Minute.
If they haven't been and Bruno is, then that's a big issue, because that makes it so easy and it makes us so frustrated. That's why Arsenal were able to play it around so casually at the back while we really struggled to progress it beyond our back four, because they were. And I mean, if Lacazette, Aubameyang, and I don't even know, Williams can put a really effective press on our back four, then why couldn't we do it today if that's what we're about as a fit, young, athletic team, that with passion that Ole has created? Like, to me, there's just still so many unanswered questions about the things that I have been told that we're moving towards.
No, it is an interesting question because, as I say, we saw that press work so well and we've actually set up in the same way. But, as you say, Arsenal are known, like us, for being defensively solid and maybe looking to play on the counter. So I don't think that he's instructed them to go for that same kind of press as he has done midweek. But I do agree with you. Then see Bruno is kind of charging in and then wondering why other people aren't. But, we saw Greenwood working very well, pressing midweek. But then again, I think that is why he's come out, because, he's a young guy. He's coming back from injury. So to expect him to play all those minutes twice in a row was a bit much. It wasn't that surprising. But still that Bruno one was very bizarre, how he comes out after being rested. I'm still really not sure about that at all. And then,
I think just
right.
on that, sorry, I think like a really interesting thing this year that I hope gets solved sooner rather than later is that last year Ole had such a lack of options, and he kind of, that was kind of it was often something we could point to in his favour, or at least as something to excuse when it was bad, because we were able to say, look, he has to play Pereira and Lingard, or what else do you expect when he only has these options available? Or he doesn't want to sub them on because that's who they are. And we were all kind of able to go, well, maybe I think he should get more out of those players, but we all accepted that, yep, that's pretty garbage, fair enough. Whereas now, we didn't get everything we wanted in the summer, but the bench always looks good, and it's not just obvious at the moment. Well, in fact, it's not obvious at all at the moment what our best formation is, what our best 11 is, and who our best subs are, and what positions they should play therein. Is it the 4-2-3-1 that we've kind of gone away from slightly? Is it the diamond, or has that just been a very one-off thing? Is it 5 at the back? are we just kind of stumbling around and reacting to different teams when we should be the one laying down how we want to play and actually imposing ourselves on games rather than always trying to kind of counter whatever someone else is doing? And those are all questions that need to be answered. Where does Van der Beek play? Where's best for Pogba? Who are the best holding midfielders? What's the forward line going to look like? He now has a fairly deep squad that means he has that kind of double-edged sword of having all that strength to draw on, particularly off
He
the
does
bench.
have a deep squad, right? But I would say that we're quite still unbalanced because we know that we've got no wingers apart from James, who's didn't even make the bench today, and there's no surprise because he's been bad for a while. And we've got a surfeit of midfielders, and I don't think that Ole wants to play a midfield diamond. I
No,
think
I don't.
what
No.
his philosophy is that 4-2-3-1, and that he hasn't now got the players to do it because he wasn't given the winger he wanted. Martial's out. And then all of a sudden, he's got a load of midfielders, and it worked midweek. So I think he's just gone with it again. I do not think that he's looked and sat, 3 weeks ago thinking, how am I going to play against Arsenal? Said we're going to play a diamond. I think he's kind of slightly been forced into it because he's not been given the exact players he wanted.
Fair enough, although, and we don't really know what level Cavani's at other than what we see on the pitch, and I agree with you, he does look somewhat off it, but he could have started with Greenwood off the right, Marcus off the left, Cavani up front. He could have played Mata, he could have played, there were other options there, although I do agree. I mean, Martial just is such a huge miss, even when he's not in the game. You just saw today how many times we were forcing the ball forward, to Marcus or Greenwood, and Gabriel or Holden were coming out right behind them, kicking through them, and nothing stuck on either of those two, nothing at all. And there was no one, and I think that's why Bruno looked so isolated, because normally it's Martial holding that ball and dropping it off 5 yards, and that's when we start to link up our play, and that's when Martial gives you so much, even when he's not in any way activated around the box or around the goal.
Well, it's something I've talked a lot about is how much Martial's kind of hold-up play came on last season, and that in this match we would have needed that so much. And maybe
100%.
Cavani could have given it us, maybe he could have, but he doesn't look, when he's come in. I mean, you tell me, Colm, we talked about him coming on kind of, midweek, and we've not seen much from him.
To me, he's looked quite sharp in the box. He's had a few little, when the ball gets flashed around, he's had a few little touches and turns and got his foot on things at like set pieces. But I think broadly, in the general run of the game, he's looked struggling with the physicality of it to me so far. So I do accept that. But my thing is, even if you know Martial's out, you know that his really, really strong hold-up play, his ability to kind of now merge his physical strength with his amazing feet, and how much of a positive that's been for us lately. You don't have that. Why are we still asking them to do it? Why are we not playing in behind Arsenal? For me, when we had the ball, at our centre-backs who are so good on the ball, Maguire and Lindelof both capable of playing passes, when Fred drops in deep, and we're still trying to do this slow, turgid play through the middle with Scott McTominay hiding from the ball, which is, a big issue today. Fred, as deep as his centre-backs, Pogba kind of floating around left somewhere and not really being effective. We're struggling so much to progress the ball through the middle of the park, which was the big issue for us today on the ball. Why are we not just whipping the ball in behind like Leicester do for Vardy? Why are we not asking Rashford and Greenwood to run those channels and get in behind and turn Arsenal around? Because that back three, back five of Arsenal with the play in front of them couldn't have been more comfortable today. And we're happy to go out to the halfway line with Marcus or with Greenwood and kick the back of them and either give away a foul, which they did pretty well, a la a Pep team, or actually just win the ball back, every single time it went up there. And we never stopped trying that. We kept trying to take the ball with our back to goal, even though neither of those two players is in any way comfortable doing it. Meant Bruno never got the ball and Arsenal were never ever stressed out. And to me, these are the things that are annoying. These are not like complicated things or unobvious things. They're not subtle in any way, shape or form. They were patently obvious probably before the game to professional coaching staff, and certainly during the game, and we never ever got to grips with it and tried anything different.
Yeah, I mean, that is one positive, is that Martial will now be back and available. He's finished his ban now. Ridiculous ban. Let's not forget what he got sent off for. Absolute shithousery from Lamella back then. But thankfully, he will be back in for us. And even though he's not been amazing yet this season and has not scored apart from the penalty,
he's vital.
He still brings so much to us. And like I say, has grown in so much into that number 9 role. And it's one of the big positives and from there. So let's hope he can come in and revitalise us from there. I mean, I want to right, move on from this Arsenal game because, yeah, it's just getting too depressing. And yeah, Com, I'm kind of with you where I said, look, it's not a great performance. It was bad. It wasn't awful. Like, we were awful earlier in the season, but it's not good enough. That's for sure. Definitely not
It's
good
on
enough.
its own is just a bad day at the office. It, in the context of this season, is such a blow. It's such a
I agree
body
with
blow.
you.
It's so
I
depressing.
said myself that this loss for me is actually worse than when we've lost to Palace and Tottenham because that was early in the season. We're still getting going. Whereas this, at this point in the season where we have started playing better, hoping to get some momentum, to then lose a game against one of our top four rivals is an absolute killer.
Any
And
listener,
it's
any listener that's made it this far into the podcast deserves an absolute gold medal and a pat on the back. 'Cause it's hard enough to summon
well,
the
that's
the
why I
will.
was trying to move on from the Arsenal game now.
To summon the will to even record the podcast is hard enough, but that's a game where you just want to forget United exists for a week, in my opinion, and just concentrate on something else.
Yeah, and look, it's the big kind of contrast, isn't it? I mean, like I say, from having that high midweek to then going so low. I mean, last week I saw a lot of people talking about what an awful performance, and I said, come on, we draw 0-0 with Chelsea. It's not the end of the world. We'll definitely see worse performances than this soon. And yeah, 1 week later,
There it is.
we've seen it basically. But yeah, look, let's move on from this anyway. And before we start talking about our next couple of games, did just want to talk about, not going to be bringing any positivity, unfortunately, because it's been quite a bad few days for Manchester United as a club. A couple of our old heroes, Nobby Stiles passed away, and then just today there's been this announcement that Sir Bobby Charlton's been diagnosed with having dementia, which I know from all personal reasons is a horrible, horrible place to be, and let's see where he goes. But there has been as well. It leads to this big question about they talk about 5 of England's 1966 World Cup winning team now being diagnosed with dementia, and there's a lot of talk about how there's some link back then to how heavy balls were, how much players were heading it, and it's really quite a kind of can of worms that's coming out now from those times. And sad to see there. And as well, his own brother obviously passed away relatively recently, Jack Charlton, and also had gone down that route. So look, best wishes to the Charlton family, and hopefully he can stay in decent health for a while longer, because dementia affects people in different ways, so we'll see from there. But I think any younger fan should definitely go and look up the kind of history. Everybody knows Sir Bobby Charlton. Sometimes Nobby Stiles gets forgotten. There's actually a really great article that we had retweeted from Reese Pythagoras all about Nobby Stiles, what kind of player he was. And these two players are the only, 2 or 3 English players who've won the World Cup and the European Cup. There is only 3, and the other one was, I forget his name now, somebody who played for Liverpool but didn't even play in that European Cup team for them. But they're the only 3 English players who've kind of have in their credit the World Cup and the European Cup. So these are like, all-time legends for England and Manchester United. So sad times there for the club. And best wishes, like I say, to the families over there. And do check out. We've posted up a few things on Twitter, especially about Nobby Stiles, who not enough is known as, and he's actually been ill for quite a while. So he's had various kind of ailments, and not had the best of times for a while, and did actually end up selling his medals and things like that. But if you ever go to United, United did actually end up buying a lot of his memorabilia off him, and you can see a lot of his story in the kind of Manchester United Museum at Old Trafford if you're ever that way over there. I think, Jamie, didn't you just go over there last year, right? You went and then did the museum
I went
tour
in
and
January.
that kind of
I went
thing.
down for the Norwich game in January, and then the following day, my girlfriend and I, we went and done the stadium tour, and we went through the club museum. And the story of Nobby Stiles having to sell his medals and a few of his other possessions and things like that, just to help keep his family afloat and keep himself afloat. It was quite tragic reading it, really, because as you say, these guys are legends. They are absolute legends in Manchester United's history and in England's history. So to see him having to resort to things like that was quite depressing, really.
Yeah, it is quite sad, like, in the modern game where players are millionaires and even average players are millionaires, that, like, legends from like the 60s, they weren't paid very much in those days. Some of them have gone on to do pretty well. And of course, Sir Bobby has been a director of Manchester United for like decades now and has been still involved in the club and is seen in the stands like still every week. So it's been fine. But yeah, there's other players like that who haven't maybe had as much opportunity after their careers ended. And no, yeah, it's quite sad to think of, and I definitely think, yeah, every United fan out there, because I know sometimes we have overseas listeners, younger listeners who might not know as much about some of the older players. You make sure you go up and read about Nobby Stiles, who was an outstanding midfielder for England, for Manchester United. He did a lot of that kind of hard work in midfield that freed up for players like Best, like Charlton, to go and do the work, and was like absolutely vital to World Cup wins, European Cup wins. So yeah, do make sure you go and read up on your United history. And if you ever are going to Old Trafford, whenever it comes back there, a visit to the museum is an absolute must as well. Uh, but but yeah, look, let's move on from there and just have a quick look at our next couple of games. I'm assuming neither of you are experts in Istanbul Başakşehir, but yeah, I have had a quick look at this team that probably not many of us have ever heard of. They won their first Turkish league just last season gone. They're another relatively new club, although I say that, we talked about RB Leipzig being founded only literally like 10 years ago. Istanbul founded in 1990, still a relatively recent team. And, they're not one of the big Turkish teams like everybody knows, Fenerbahce, Galatasaray, Besiktas. But all of a sudden, they've come from nowhere. And they have a pretty bizarre story because, as far as I understand, they're basically backed by one of the political parties over there. And been a lot of money being put into them, and they've come second and third in recent years. And yeah, they won their league last year. But yeah, this on paper, our next two Champions League games should be our easiest. We now go away to Istanbul, and then they
Raphael
come
plays
to
for him,
play us
doesn't
after a great.
he?
Yeah, they've got Raphael there, and looking down their squad list, actually, and they're still regular starters for them both at the age of 35. They're all like people who follow the Premier League. Remember, Demba Ba and Martin Skirtle are both regulars in that team, and they're both 35 years old. So yeah, and as I said, Raphael's come in there and is a starter for them as well. So there's quite a few of the old Premier League players who are playing regularly for this team, and yeah, this I'm expecting we'll get a lot of rotation there. But yeah, we're sat pretty happily now in our group. A lot of people were not expecting us to get out of this group, but yeah, 6 points from there. Maybe we're going to have to start focusing on the Champions League ahead of the league in the soon. But yeah, no, it's not that bad now. But I would expect quite a lot of rotation here, Jamie. You think, now there's definitely players who are going to need a rest. And I think maybe Ole thought he could get another game out of the likes of Fred or whatever before then playing a few other players in these next couple of Champions League games. So yeah, you would
Yeah, I'm
expect
expecting a lot
rotation, right?
for Wednesday, to be honest, because as you said, I think he would have liked to have given Fred a rest today. Unfortunately, obviously, he couldn't. But I did actually think when Fred came off, I did think that's the first time I've seen him actually look tired. I've not seen him look tired before, so he definitely needs the rest. And there's a few other players, as we've kind of said, that have played maybe 4 or 5 games in a row, or certainly a lot of minutes in the last 4 or 5 games. So I would expect definitely changes. Like I would probably Henderson to come in, definitely Martial to get a run out. Maybe a start for the likes of Cavani, and a few others in the midfield as well. So I'm expecting mass rotation.
Yeah, it is a question that if Cavani starts, then what does Martial start and play left side, which we've not really seen him do for us for quite a while now. So yeah, that would be interesting to see whether he does that, because normally you think Martial must start, seeing as he's not played. But yeah, it would have also been a good time to give Cavani a start there. So yeah, but we'll definitely, I'm sure the likes of Mata can come in. Van der Beek will definitely start this game, and yeah, we'll see a bit of a change lineup there. Yeah, Tuanzebe, another player who I hope to see more minutes from and see whether he can start playing himself into the first team. Is there anyone else, Colm, you think from our kind of fringe players who deserves a game over
I'm
when we're
wondering,
like rotating?
is Tellez likely to back, or will that be too soon?
I think it might be too soon for him, but
Yeah.
yeah, maybe then somebody like Williams was on the bench today, and we've not seen anything of him this
Yeah,
season
absolutely.
after quite a good season last
I'd
year.
definitely play Pogba. Give him the full 90.
I've actually
Keep him away from that Everton game.
Because I thought Matt has been quite good recently, and I don't know if he maybe should have started today, but I thought he might get on. I
just think against Arsenal playing 5 at the back, was it ever?
He's got a bit more craft though, hasn't he?
Like scream the right game for Mata than
some of the others. So I thought he might go on, but I think I'm definitely expecting him to start against Istanbul.
Yeah, I think as long as we don't slip up and let Demba Ba in, we should be alright.
Yeah, that's it. Demba Ba is a United hero for us from that days where Liverpool threw away the league. That's what I'll always remember him for. Classic goal. And
also him at he played at Newcastle with
Papa
Cisse they played with.
Yeah,
and they had just a dynamite. Like they were like Cole and York.
That's
the other thing I remember before. I was a big fan of it.
Between them,
some crazy goals.
Yeah, he was great for Newcastle, which is why he ended up getting that move to Chelsea. But then, and I say Martin Skirtle as well.
He's just a dick. Yeah,
I think we saw him against us.
Was it Fenerbahce?
Yeah, I was thinking, was it not?
It was.
I thought it was Fenerbahce.
Yeah,
I remember him playing in yellow and black. That's just
he definitely played against us for somebody else a couple of years ago. Yeah, old Skeletor there. So
exactly.
We see him back over there. So it's always nice to see. But as I say, look, we laugh at it, but these guys are Turkish champions. So they're no mugs, and going away there, we shouldn't just assume that it's going to be an easy run. And it would be, like you say, Colm, just like this United team, to beat PSG, beat Leipzig, and then go and lose to like Istanbul or something like that.
I mean, for me, it's I think we'll win handily, but it's all about Everton. Following that, I think
that's it. Next game, Everton away. Again, one of our top 4, definitely top 6 contenders, looking very good under Ancelotti. They have gone a bit off form in the last couple of weeks, definitely missing James. I don't assume he might be back fit to play us. He's not been played in play today. And
I think they've got 2 suspensions as well.
But Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
I've seen that.
So Luka Dean suspended. Richarlison, I think, will be
back. Is Luka Dean suspended? Because I think he's had his red card rescinded.
Well, he couldn't play today. He didn't play today. So.
Yeah, it is something actually to go and look at. I don't know. Or he's had his suspension down to like 1 game or something like that. Yeah. I should have actually done my research on that one properly. But maybe if you go and look up, I think maybe Digne might be available. But
I think they'll be pretty much back to full strength. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Richarlison's back, James is back. Calvert-Lewin's obviously they're in good form.
No, I think Richarlison is definitely still suspended.
Oh,
Digne may be available, and James probably, I guess, we're back. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin has been the kind of form striker of the season, really, and been killing me in the fantasy. I've not had him at any point this year and regretting it. Is he in your team, Jamie, Colm?
Yeah, I have him.
Kept me going, actually, because the rest of my team's been rotten, but he's kept me going.
You couldn't be doing as bad as Nick. That's all I'll say.
No, that's all. Yeah, like my fantasy season's already a write-off, and I wish I had a Champions League to focus on. It, so
I think United have been bad. We just need to look at Nick's fantasy football team. There's no joy.
Definitely. No excuses. Literally, and I've been playing fantasy football for I'd say something I go back to school days where we used to bloody write it down and post each other teams and literally in the snail mail that a lot of you youngsters probably have never used post before and don't know what a stamp is, right? But this is how we used to play fantasy football in our school days. You used to write your team down, people you have to manually work out who'd got an assist, who'd got a goal, and you had Match and Shoot out there magazine to go and see what the scores were around the leagues, and that's how we used to do it. So I literally, this is the worst season I've had in my life for I'm talking about 25 years or something like that. But this was going to happen sooner or later. I say, look, it's been a pretty depressing podcast, as I say, a loss there. Bad news for some old United legends. Nothing going well for my fantasy team. But it's up and down there. Say, look, we have that kind of midweek party after Leipzig. So, we've got to take these kind of games on the chin. And, we've got to just pick ourselves up from there and see what we can do. As I say, that Everton game is not going to be any easier, but we have got a better record away from home at the moment. So, hopefully that is just something we can do. But, really, like you say, Colm, you said yourself that now that we've lost this, you would have normally said, if we go away to Everton and get a draw, it's not the end of the world. But really, at this point now, we have to win.
I think Ole will be safe for a long, long time. There's no issue with that. But as the question opened the pod from Buckaroo, whatever his name is, like seven games, 6 points, was it, or 7.6 games?
I 7.6 games.
Like,
yeah.
If we don't win at Everton, I mean that is problem territory. Like, it is so bad. I don't want to amp pressure on it, because Everton are a good side, and that's just the problem at the moment. You know, all these games are their own thing. You know, and you cannot afford to not be at the races. You know, you can against maybe, you know, midweek in the Champions League, now that we've, you know, won the two big games, but against Everton we have to be bang at it. I think we will be. I think we'll smash them. I think that about every single game that United go into. If we played Arsenal tomorrow, I think we'll beat them 3-0. Like, that's just the way it is. But, you know, hope for the best.
Yeah, normally when we have a bad result, we have bounced back from it. So yeah, let's see. Let's hope it goes that way. I'm not sure whether we'll come back after that Istanbul game. We might take a bit of a rest, but yeah, we might surprise you. But we'll definitely be back to record again after Everton. And yeah, I think that's about it for now. As I say again, please do hit us up on the Twitter, Facebook, give us a review on iTunes, Apple, and yeah, we'll see you back next week.
Good night, troops.
Cheerio.